So next, we're going to, now that we've spoken about this one piece of leader-led, now we're going to hear from Megan Umdahl. She's an SVP partner, Alliances and Operations for North America Insight. She's from Insight. She's going to speak to us. Let me just say, she's an expert at leading and developing high-performance teams, right? And that they decrease expenses and they uptick on revenue. She's big on feedback and she's all about people. I know that for a fact. So Megan, over to you.
Thank you so much, Patty. And I just wanted to say thank you to all of you guys for your time today to discuss the importance of high trust relationships. I do have to say that I thought it was a bit ironic that I was selected to talk on this topic. The reason being is I'm a Gemini, and the world would say I have an inherent bias to be untrustworthy. But what I'm going to share with you today is that I've really learned over my career how important building strong relationships that are built on trust are just so important, not just for your career and your career progression, but it's also for your personal life and your own happiness. These things are absolutely critical. And I think one thing that happens is when we start out in our career, we're focused on learning so many skill sets, so many core competencies, that this foundation of trust as being a core element to what's really going to make you successful and feel comfortable and feel part of a community at your work, we don't tend to focus on enough. So before I jump in, I thought best time today would be spent sharing with all of you how I've learned to build trust in my relationships. But before I jump into that, I think we would all describe trust a bit differently. So I just wanted to ground in terms of what do I consider to be the key elements of having a trustworthy relationship. The first one is confidence. So we tend to have a higher level of trust with people that we inherently see as having a really strong core competency. So that can happen both in your personal life as well as in your work career. But what I think great leaders learn early on is who has these really strong core competencies and how do we best leverage them. And we also do that in our personal life. You know, some of us aren't amazing, for instance, at interior design, but we know a friend that's exceptional at that, and we reach out and we leverage them for that great expertise. The other thing that builds great trust is reliability. So when you think about reliability, it can come down to as simple as what is a person's say and do ratio. If you think about it, people say they're going to do a lot of things, but what they often don't fulfill on is doing them, or doing them timely, or as completely as what they implied they were going to do. So really watching and being very intentional and careful about what you say you're going to do, and then ensuring you actually fulfill on it timely and at the level expected, that builds a tremendous amount of trust. And so one of the things I think people could take note in this is that saying no can actually build a lot of credibility, because it shows humility. Like when you know you've reached your limit and that's going to go past what you're going to be able to do successfully, being able to give that feedback, I think, is really important. And then the last element of trust that I think is most important, it's hardest to establish, and people probably have a hard time articulating it, why they feel someone is sincere or someone isn't sincere, but it is probably the most important element of trust. And so when I think about sincerity and how I measure it is both in personal life and in work situations, it's trying to evaluate, will this person do what's best for the company and what's best for me, even if it goes against their own self-interest. And that's something I think about a lot relative to sincerity. So what I wanted to share with you guys is just a few points in my career where I got really good feedback in terms of how I could improve trusting relationships. So I started my career at E&Y. It was an incredible company. They did a lot of great things for me. One of the things that I'll always remember them for is they were truly a learning institution, and then just constantly invested in us as continuing on from our education and our training and soft skills and technical skills. But one of the great things about E&Y is they really believed in their alumni network. So after I left the firm, I actually went to a client of theirs, which was great because I would still be able to see my former EY colleagues. And I joined a company that was experiencing pretty high growth, and through a lot of hard work and I would say tenacity, I was able to have pretty rapid career progression there. I started out as a manager and within a pretty short time frame became a director. And one afternoon, a partner of EY stopped by my office and he said, "Hey, Megan, can we catch up for a little bit?" And then he started to give me some coaching and some advice. And he said, "Hey, not having received any specific feedback from anyone here at the company you're working at, I would just say, based on you having come from this high-end consulting firm, coming into this company and having pretty rapid career progression, a few things are happening with your peers. One, they are a bit intimidated by you. They might feel a little bit threatened, and they don't have a lot of trust. And so you need to recognize that, even if you haven't gotten that specific feedback or feel that intuitively from working with them, but that would just be human beings' natural tendency. So what you need to do to overcome that, my best suggestion to you is go out to your peers and seek their feedback. Even on topics that you think you already have the best path forward, you already know how you're planning to approach it or handle it. By reaching out to others, talking them through things that you're working through and soliciting their feedback and advice, it really, really builds rapport. So he encouraged me to do that. And I would say still to this day, I try and be focused on that and tell myself as often as I can, "Hey, Megan, you like to get a lot of things done, but you need to put relationships over task. So take the time to build those relationships with your peers." I would say another thing that happened in my personal life, because I think, having high trust relationships relate both to personal as well as professional lives, is I graduated college fairly young. I did the undergraduate program in 3 years and the master's degree in 1.5 years. So compared to a lot of my friends, I was in the workforce working in, consulting at a pretty young age. And what started to be a little bit of a dynamic shift with my friends was they started to come to me and seek advice and kind of mentoring and coaching. And before I knew it, that was kind of how our dynamic was shifting. And one of my friends came to me and said, "Hey, Megan, one thing you need to think about is because you started out and your career progression has gone so fast, it's becoming a little less approachable in terms of our relationship. And you haven't asked us for feedback or advice in a while. And because I wasn't being vulnerable with them, because I had started to just take on this role of, they'd ask questions and I'd work to give them feedback and advice. It was shifting a dynamic in a way that wasn't amazing and not how I wanted to interact with my friends. And so I thought that was really incredible feedback given to me probably just at the right time. And I've really pivoted from that sense. And even though, people might come to me with a lot of questions and how, I might approach a situation, I now with all of my friends as well to take time to say, "Hey, this is stuff that I'm going through, and what would you do? And what's your feedback on that?" And that really just does build much better, stronger, trusted personal relationships as well. The last thing that I would say in terms of, two last things I would say in terms of building trusting relationships is for people to trust you, they need to know that you authentically care. And so during, the last 2 years, one of the things that I did as part of my role was I was leading our integration and distribution facilities, which meant teammates needed to stay on site during COVID. And that was a level of inspirational leadership to have teammates still being willing to come on site and expose themselves, while so many others were being able to work remote and being able to isolate during this time. One of the things that I found to be the absolute most important thing was to just show the teammates how much I authentically cared. So I would do a lot of all hands, and I would step through how I was spending a lot of my day working on getting them protective equipment, trying to even move ahead of the CDC in terms of getting them everything possible that we could do to make it the absolute safest working environment, and also sharing with them how critical the work that they were doing to keep our healthcare systems and our governments and our schools continuing to be able to be operational during the pandemic. But you need to get super personal at times like this. So probably the thing that I did of most importance was I was on calls every morning with our HR team and my site leaders, and anyone that we found out that came down with COVID or that a family member did, I would get their cell phone number and I would start calling them and checking in on them. And for ones that weren't doing well, it wouldn't be a single phone call. I would call and stay in touch with them until they were released from the hospital or until their family member was. And that authentic level of care, I think, really made the teammates feel so much safer. So I would say, that built a ton of trust in them being focused on coming into the facility still. And then the last thing that I wanted to end on is another way to focus on in your personal life and building high trust relationships is with your kids. I don't think there's a more important high trust relationship that any of us can have than having our kids, authentically trust us. And so one thing that I think we miss as parents with that is, in order for kids to really feel like they can share with you things in confidence, they need to have heard your successes as well as your failures. You need to have been vulnerable with them so that they're comfortable sharing with you things that aren't going well or that they're worried or that they're concerned about. The more that you lean into them with a balanced view of where you did amazing and where you wish you could have performed better or where you truly failed, the more your kids are going to come and have those real conversations with you, and the more impactful you can be in having them understand that to be successful, it comes with a ton of failure, and you learn from that and you grow and you get stronger. And so I just wanted to say thank you guys for all of your time. I just wanted to give you a few practical things that have really stuck in my brain as I've become more intentional about building high trust relationships. And now I'm going to kick it over to Chai, and she's going to go through an actual framework of how we get better about building high trusting relationships. So with that, thank you all for your time today.
Thank you, Megan. That was fantastic setup and helping us kind of share the framework for our network and really work on it. Are you all ready to learn the framework of how to build the trust? Yes? Okay, first, let's give a big round of applause for Megan. What a great stories and great framework you had shared, Megan. Okay, excellent. So here is the one. What I'm going to share is a little workshop style content. So I want all of you to engage with me. Promise you're going to engage. Yes? Give me thumbs up. Okay. And make sure you're able to connect with me and give you insights so that we can have is really a dialogue on this particular one as I'm going to share the framework. Okay. So when you go to here, I will start with this particular quote. If you go to the next slide, it's by, I would say, Stephen Covey, right? So what he talks about is the trust is the highest form of human motivation, and it brings out the very best in people. Do you agree with the statement? I do, but do you agree with that statement? Say yes in the chat. Perfect. So when as tech leaders, see, I love it. Every one of you feel the same way. I do feel it. So as tech leaders, right, it's common that we often find ourselves immersed in our products and in our technology and our solution. And especially around how the features and the benefits are serving our customers. So we allow the technology itself to drive the business. But ultimately, the growth and the success of the business is truly rooted in the human connection and partnership ethic that bring to the table each time you are having that conversation. And that's the power of storytelling, and that's the power of networking with high trust. So that's the secret of building like the high trust relationship that creates like an abundant mindset and limitless access to the new opportunity. This is a technique that I learned from Tucker Stein. He's also going to be here today. And he encouraged me to really build a high trust relationship early on when you really kind of have a conversation with people. And I will ask all of you to try it out this weekend. Promise me you're going to do it. Say yes in the chat. This is a social experiment we are all going to do this weekend. Okay. So the social experiment that he shared with me, which was very powerful, is when you walk into any networking meeting or a cocktail party, what's the first question you actually ask people? This is how I used to ask. What do you do? Where do you work? That was my typical way of asking. But instead of that, he taught me is when you have the conversation, ask them is what lights you up every day? What is that lights you up? And those conversations were so meaningful because now every time I meet with people, I'm actually asking them about them. I don't care about the titles. I don't care about where they work. I really care about as truly what lights them up, what makes them alive every single day. So when you meet this weekend with anyone, whoever you're meeting, your family member, your kid, or anybody you're in touch, just ask that question is what lights them up, and it'll be a game changer. It's a whole new language you will learn about trust, and that's a language of trust, and we will explore in depth. And so today the foundation, we are going to be talking about how to build a high trust relationship. So are you all ready? Okay, so 2 stories and then 1 insight and 1 framework we'll talk about. So personal story, I joined Oracle, and I got into the pricing and licensing group very early on. And I used to work with this amazing corporate VP. Her name was Jacqueline Woods. So a lot of the work that we used to do in the pricing and licensing was extremely confidential. And a lot of the things were really whatever you share was based on trust. But me being me, which I didn't have a lot of skilling on high trust skilling, basically I used to work with people and used to be very transparent of what are the changes that were happening in the organization. But what happened was actually backfired. I shared too much. I gave information that I shouldn't be giving information. But then I had that meeting with my boss, and she was like, she sat down and she explained what trust means is. And that Megan exactly said, yes, you're competent. That's great. But you have to be reliable. You have to be sincere. You need to be really, clear on what can be dwelled in information and not. So that was my first, I would say, connection to what high trust relationship really need. And I've worked years and years of that. And if you have worked with me, you'll know is what you share, it never goes out of me. It's just very much between you and me, right? The second story, it was with my son, the older one. Whenever he used to do something, I would usually say, I don't trust you. Come on, like, why don't you do it right? And that one was, I didn't realize it was a very emotional statement. And he used to get hurt, and he would really feel very uncomfortable doing anything because I would use the word trust. So one day he said, Mom, it doesn't really work for me when you say I don't trust you, because you really do not believe in me. And that was for another journey point to really explore is how to really explain trust in a way so that you can take the emotional pain out. Because as soon as you use the word trust, it is very emotional word. So that one was a journey, and the framework that I will share, I've been using for the last 20 years. And I'm hoping that each one of you can take something away today and really make a difference around your team, around your people around you. And you'll have a language of articulating trust, because I'm an engineer. So I'll break it down into formulas. So I'll share you the formula today. Okay. So let's go to a couple of things that I want to ask you before I will share the framework. The first question I have for each one of you is, what is the hardest part of creating a high trust relationship? Go ahead, tell me that answer. What is the hardest part of creating a high trust relationship? I will wait as Yep, fear of letting down, not taking things personal, vulnerability, being open, projecting confidence, trusting someone else, breaking through the noise. But here are the three hardest thing about relationship. Number one is about don't know how it's done. That's the first thing. Number two is measuring. How do you measure a high trust relationship? When do you know it's right, it's not? And number three is communicate when someone breaks your trust or even someone actually built your trust. Those are usually your three reasons that you have when you look at trust very strategically, right? It's like you don't know how to do. And most of us, we like, when I say is like, how do you really build trust? You'll have like words, but not a framework. And measuring trust is very hard. I'm telling you, it was like one of the most hardest thing till I found that formula. And I'm like, boy, that was life-changing. And then I was able to remove the emotion. Going to the second question I have for you to engage with me. Describe what happens when your trust is broken in work and in personal environment. Tell me what's the emotional state that you go through. I shut down. That's so true, Tucker. That is the emotional total shutdown. Absolutely. You feel sad, hard to forgive. Yes. Break away, lose faith, disappointed. What else? Okay, so here are the things that usually happen. Going to the next slide, Raisa. Yep, I take it on to a task of myself. Emotional pain, you take it personally because if someone breaks your trust, you actually can start to say, did I do something? Did I say something? Did I do something? And you constantly go into that emotional vortex that you should not be going. Number two that happens is completely disengagement. You want to disengage from the world, you want to disengage from the person, and you also want to disengage with everything that's happening, even your projects, because you start to self-doubt yourself. Number three that happens is disappointment. You get really disappointed because you don't know what's going on. And that is really the challenges that all of us go, because the feeling of disappointment that somebody doesn't believe you is really true, because the belief system in yours will start to shake up. So those are kind of the experience that you go through. Going to the next phase. So if you could measure trust, what kind of impact would it have on you? Go ahead and tell me. If you could measure the trust, if I give you the formula and you can start measuring the trust with the people you're hanging out and all these questions, the nagging questions you have, what kind of impact would it have on you? Go ahead. Confidence. It's well said. I would trust more. Yes, we do need to trust with each other. Better decision. Yes. Build higher trust relationship. I'll spend more time working on task and less time worrying. Very well said, Amanda. Be more of myself. Absolutely. So going to the next slide, Raisa. So the framework that I'm going to introduce with you is called as Rock of Trust. So ROCC is your framework word. So you need to become a rock of trust. And you're also going to measure people from that particular lens. So you actually become like a really strong friend, like a trust friend, I would say the bond between each other. So you actually can have a great time with people. And I have seen many of my people in my community, and I think we have such a high trust with each other that we can actually be authentic. We can talk about it because there is no fear if somebody is going to sabotage you. So, but this gives you a framework to measure how things are, okay? Going to the benefits that you will see if you can measure and start implementing tomorrow, really reduce or eliminate the emotional pain. I would say is like, there are hardly times that I sit down and say, oh my God, I'm going through emotional pain, because I have a language and I have a formula to track that and really measure myself as not to be in that state. Second, I can clearly communicate where there was a breakdown in the trust. And the last one is you have enriched relationship. Is that something you all want to seek and learn about? Say yes in the chat, or give me thumbs up. That's also fine. Okay, so the framework, the way it goes is, it's called as the rock of framework. The first R stands for reliability. That means the person or you are aligned at the level that you basically know what the intention is, what's the purpose is, what's the goal. You can actually have a confidence with them and do what they say they will do, and you will do what you say you will do. Second, open and honesty. It's really a gut feeling. Please listen to your gut. And if you don't listen, that's when you get into trouble. Anytime your gut feeling is when you start worrying. As soon as you start worrying, you know something is wrong in that relationship. So start paying attention to the gut feeling. Third is competent. You're looking at, are they skilled? Are you skilled in the one? And if you don't, can you get the right person to do the right thing? And sometimes saying no is the right one. As Megan said, that is so true. Having the courage to say no is also important. And the last one is compassion. Can you put yourself in their shoes, and can they put yourself in their shoes? So you have to measure everybody on a scale of 1 to 10. It feels like a black mirror. Trust me, it's not. It is very helpful when you go through, just pick a name in your head and then you say, okay, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, are they reliable? Do they do what they say? Or do you have to constantly chase them, ask them, and you're always on the edge, and they create this emotional anxiety for you? So if it's 10, give them 10. If it's 1, you know them. Number 2, open and honesty. Put in on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being fabulous. You can trust them. They're very honest. They're very authentic. I can, have a conversation with them. Competent. Rate that one too, because if you have the right competent people in your ecosystem, all of you will actually grow faster. If not, you're all going to fail, right? And the last one is compassion. Can you care? Can you authentically care about each other and scale that? As soon as you get 34 or more, trust me, you will always say, I trust that person because they are reliable, they're open and honest, they're competent, and they're also compassionate. Does that help, the framework? Yes? Easy? Can you go do an exercise with me now? Okay, let's go to the next one, the example. This one is a simple example, right? Very simple, is Jane Doe. And I would like a volunteer to come on the stage with me so we can do it real time. The relation challenge that is the vendor is not providing designs on timely basis. That happens in the entrepreneur world, and I'm going to use that example. First is rate that is, what's the reliability factor there? Are they reliable? Can you describe what they are going through? Basically, they both are not really communicating about the design status or a date or things, whatever that looks like. Open and honesty. And also, this is personal. They're not really sharing what the truth is, or she's not sharing the truth, or he is not sharing the truth. And it's causing you frustration. You know when somebody causes you frustration, that is all about rate that one. Rate authentically from your perspective. Third is competence. Describe, are they competent? Can they do the work? Do they have the skills to do? Ask them for example. And the last one is compassion. Can they really understand you and you can understand them? So there's authentically, they're caring about you and your business. That gives you a score. And that tells you if the relationship requires work or this is a high trust relationship. Once you have that answer, when you're communicating with somebody like that, like this is how I communicate to my kids or anybody. I say, listen, we have some issues with trust. And let me tell you where I am struggling with. I feel like you are not really reliable, and that is causing me a lot of frustration. And I would love to figure out how we can be reliable. Is there something I need to know about the situation you're dealing with? Can I really understand? Can I create adjustment for you? So when you do that, I'm telling you, the relationship starts to change really well, and you really can get everybody from low point to a high point. So use that formula as a mechanism to really help you enhance your trusted relationship. And also use the same formula for yourself. When you show up in a relationship, say, am I reliable? Am I showing up for them? Am I open and honest? Am I competent? Am I compassionate? If you can score 35 or more in that relationship, trust me, you will become the high trusted partner for anyone that you want to build relationship with. Is that a great way to help you? I use this one with my kids. I'm telling you, it's magical. I don't hurt their feelings. They believe in me because they know I will actually have a very precise conversation and really not really make them feel stupid or make them feel like they don't have the capabilities. So use this technique. Anyone interested to join me on the stage, and we'll do an exercise so you can see how it works. Raise your hand and come on the stage with me. Okay, since I didn't see that, I'm hoping you all learned something. Did you learn something? Okay, so here is my quote for all of you. I'll leave this one behind, is building your network really starts with a high building, building your high trust relationship. Even if you have 5 high trusted relationship, your life will be extremely fulfilling. You'll be happy and you'll have zero stress in your life. So I would love to close the conversation by asking you, did you learn something? Were there any takeaways and any action that you're going to take this weekend and going forward? Tell me what your takeaways were and what is one action you'll take to build a high trust relationship. Practice, yes. Trust can be measured, yes. I'm going to use the framework going forward and ask about the passion, not about people doing. Yes. So again, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be here. With that, I will hand over to Patty, and let's have her over to talk about how to build strategic advisory roles. Is that good?
Thank you so much.